Hi, I'm Kelsey Zeiser. Welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. We're here in New Orleans, and I've had the opportunity to tour Caesars Superdome, which will be the site of the Super Bowl LIX next year. So we took a look at some of their infrastructure, and today on the podcast, I'm joined by
Kadie Gavan. I'm the Senior Engineering Director for Verizon in the Central Gulf Coast submarket.
Thanks for joining me, Kadie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so it was really
We got
fun.
a swanky little place.
Yeah. This is not actually the Caesars Superdome for those watching the video. This is the Le Pavilion Hotel, which is very nice, and we've got this swanky couch.
We do.
So it was really a neat experience to go down on the field and hear more about what Verizon's been doing to get ready for the Super Bowl. Maybe we can start from the beginning. You and I were talking offline about how this has been a longstanding partnership, but tell us a little bit about how Verizon got started with the current updates to the network infrastructure for the next Super Bowl.
Yeah, so we knew we wanted to upgrade the system in the Caesars Superdome regardless of Super Bowl LIX, because they host events all year round, and they were actually remodeling, so it was like a double whammy. But we really focus on that particular event because we use it as our calculations to make the best decision on how much actual capacity, and that comes all the way from your transport, out to our switches, which pass the data from like a much bigger perspective, to what we call our head end, where you're having a lot of the brains of the cell site and the what feeds the antennas, and then ultimately how many radios and antennas, which are more visible to the customer's eye. But that all comes from calculations of this many people will be served in here. This assumption will be made about how many Verizon customers will be here. And this is the kind of service we want to provide each and every person that has Verizon service.
Mm-hmm. As you were planning, did you come across any challenges in terms of, there's so many different pavilions and suites and cement, does that make it difficult to deploy some of those 5G assets?
Yes. And I think, that's a big thing with any venue is, more mature infrastructure is the cell sites that you kind of see outside, and we take that and we make it more localized, and we get the antennas more localized and create zones. And so that, the infrastructure of the facility really dictates where we can actually place those antennas and create those zones. So yes, to answer your question, but then on top of it, we had the element of coordinating through a huge renovation of the whole entire stadium, because the Superdome was getting a complete remodel over the last 2 years.
Well. Gerard was sharing with us, who also is with Verizon, and we spoke with in April about the Jazz Festival. He was sharing that they had, cut out parts of the stadium to fit new escalators in, and so it was quite the remodel. And we saw them prepping for a high school game this weekend. And I believe you said that in terms of antennas, there's 509 millimeter wave antennas. Is that right?
Yes.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's the most I've ever seen deployed in one location. Now, some of those are outdoors as well, serving the influx of people coming in and out of the stadium, our customers coming in and out of the stadium. So those were very strategic, like high quantity. You got to be very strategic at where you put them. And then there's also, you can tilt, azimuth wise, or horizontally or vertically. And so every one of those has been fine tuned when it comes to that, to create those specific zones to serve people the best of their ability.
Yeah, we took a look at some of them from the suites, and it was kind of like a Where's Waldo game of trying to find, because they're very blended in very well since they're black and placed behind a TV. Yeah, it was hard to. We were talking about from the field looking up and trying to find the matsing antennas. I couldn't see them at all until we got to the top of the Superdome.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some of those. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to deploy matching antennas as well, and how they're good for a stadium environment?
Yeah, I can. I do want to touch on because we actually do a lot of covering of the antennas, and that's a whole process with. So that we don't see them, because the big thing with a venue is a lot of times they don't really want to see. They want what the antennas serve. Right. They don't really want to see them. So it was a compliment you said that. It was a where's Waldo, because that's important, and that was a whole other problem to solve and many engineers to solve when they're putting antennas anywhere to serve, the better good of the environment and the aesthetics. And,
that does sound like a really big challenge to make sure that they're effective and covering the customers and the attendees at the event, but also making sure it's fits in with what their the look that they want for the stadium.
100%. Now, matsing is a really great antenna for an environment like this. Anywhere where you're going to have really dense amount of people, and a big part of serving someone is to have a very dominant signal. And to do that, you can't really interfere with other antennas and the signals coming from those antennas. We call it SINR, signal to noise ratio. We want that clean as possible. So that being said, matsing, you can have, they have a bunch of different models, but you can have up to like 48 of the same frequency, different carrier, and it's very narrow. So, and there's a great, what we call roll-off, meaning like you have a very good delineation to the next sector. And that's really important in an environment where you're flooding it with RF, but you really need like distinct serving signal and for that customer to have the best experience.
That makes sense.
Their phone's not competing with the next sector. You really want it, and it's very difficult. That's a big part when you hear about performance engineers, in the industry. But this is like with sound or anything frequency. If you really want a dominant signal, but you have to compete with other signals, you like it takes fine tuning, and that's where a lot of the energy in the optimization space is spent, is cleaning those signals. Now, the matsing antennas allow us to do that pretty well. Like as you saw, we had like 5 clusters of them, and so even like this, when you looked at one cluster, the spatial separation even from the antennas was really important to identify and design too.
Yeah, and the clusters look to be the ball or sphere type matsing antennas, and then lower down in the suites we saw some of the panel type, which were smaller. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to have different types in different locations?
Yeah, I mean the big ones, we use them for the most sectors of what we call it, or the most dominant signals. So you can do more, right? And then the smaller form factors, you still get that benefit and the technology that those antennas provide. And in this case, we are using matsings. Other vendors have this technology and are working on antennas similarly. But the smaller ones just are less, but they're still going to provide that great like narrow beam width and that tight roll off.
And I also was talking to Guillermo Salinas a little bit about the coach-to-coach communications partnership with the NFL. How's that going? It sounded like it's going well, and that's maturing. What do you?
Yeah. I mean, we work really closely with that team, and I think it's going really well. There's great relationships being built, and I think the need for that is getting greater. We just got off some, going into playoffs for both NFL and college football, and you see that a lot of offensive coaches are sitting high, and they're away from their head coach, they're away from their counterparts, and so, that's just like one scenario I can think of. So I think, people are going to continue to try to want to do better, just like we want to in our wireless network, and grow and learn more technology of how we can make everything better. Like, so is sports. And if we can align that together, I think, that partnership and what the coach to coach is doing is very applicable.
And that's on 4G, and it's essentially a private network. Is that right?
Great. Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also mentioned, Verizon's been able to take that internationally as well too. So that's pretty cool. Also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the, I suppose, lessons learned. Light Reading toured Allegiant Stadium for Super Bowl LVIII. Were there any lessons learned from that or from other similar deployments that you were able to apply to the update to the Caesars Superdome?
Yeah, so I mean, we across teams work really closely together on design lessons learned and just deployment lessons learned. With Allegiant, we're not the same OEM, as I told you. Here is Samsung. They're actually an Ericsson market. However, like the deployment of where they put antennas, maybe where they would have wanted to put antennas, we tried to incorporate in this design, just kind of that whole level up concept. We also use all of their data. So our assumptions, back to the beginning of this conversation, we do all of our mapping from what we call dimensioning, but it's really that whole capacity. Like how many people are going to be here? What are we going to serve? But then we have a growth factor, and so every Super Bowl we have like really immersed ourselves into the data to help understand and fine tune that growth factor that plays a part into that whole blueprint of what are we going to do to try to get to this end goal.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think, and then much more. We host a command center. A lot of lessons learned as we grow. And then also like technology we can bring in. The company has like internal, tool groups, and how can we improve those? So yes, I mean, in short, we gain a lot every time we learn from the next one and try to, either improve something that they didn't like as much or just build on what was already great, which usually they've always gone great.
Yeah.
So.
And I imagine not just the Super Bowl, but also was talking to some folks offline about Taylor Swift Eras Tour, where I imagine there's a lot of demand on the network to stream to social and post
huge
Instagram.
uplink.
And that's probably a good use case to apply here.
We were really, so the Superdome got the Eras Tour 3 days at the end of October. And that was a big test for us. It's actually the biggest uplink test we'll see before the Super Bowl, and probably maybe more we'll see. But a lot of people are streaming and uploading that tour, whether it's like the entire thing or like segments or with multiple social platforms. So yeah, it went really well. We feel really strongly about it, serving the customers in that environment. It's a different environment than the Super Bowl attendees, but nonetheless, it was a great test because there is such a heavy upload experience.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of can, but.
I've never been, but I have tons of friends. My sister's a huge Swiftie, and like, I think the energy too, it's kind of like contagious. So even if you're not like typical like social media uploader, you're gonna like do it. So it's like, it's just, one of those things.
Yeah.
So.
And at a lot of concerts, there's also
it ended on Sunday, that tour. I heard it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, apps too that people are using to sometimes do light shows with their phones. So yeah, that's something to incorporate too. Just to wrap up, wanted to talk a little bit about surrounding the stadium. Any temporary assets from the barnyard, the cows and colts, any of those that you plan on deploying? And are there also small cells that have been deployed outside as well?
So I'm actually incredibly proud that, so let me preface, I am very proud of our cows, colts, and all of our temp deployments that we have available to us to deploy and serve customers. But this particular Super Bowl, we have done a phenomenal job at like planning and executing on things that will stay permanently. So I think, we are equipped and ready to deploy some temp assets. But for the most part, we are permanently serving New Orleans with the investment that we've made, which is, there'll be stuff that comes up and we'll deploy, a cow or colt to serve things that come up, as we move closer to the big game. But we, I feel like New Orleans is a perfect spot to do the investment. There's a lot more than the Super Bowl that comes here. There's a lot more of our customers that come here to have a great time in highly densely populated events. There's huge concerts, there's Mardi Gras, there's a French Quarter Fest, there's Jazz Fest. I mean, it's just, we have a lot of people that come here. And so, the investments that we've made have been very sound and will, just provide a great experience for the people coming to New Orleans for many years.
Yeah, for sure. And are there small cells deployed as part of the permanent infrastructure as well?
Yes, throughout the quarter, it's a very dense deployment. And then we've added a lot of C-band to that deployment. So that, has been a huge uplift. We'll see, even more, there was a good infrastructure in the quarter to begin with, but with that frequency bandwidth, we're going to see great experience for people through and through. So
yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for the tour and for taking the time to tell me a little bit more about what Verizon's deployed, and best of luck for the Super Bowl.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.